going around the room. I don't know where it is now. Just put your first name and a yes or no as to whether or not you are actually currently owning or not. Does anyone know where that is? Oh, down there? Okay.
You got it.
Okay. So before I get that, I'm just going to do a random sample, just to make sure that I'm actually tailoring the message today to the right audience. The assumption here is because it's all bootstrappers, that these are folks who really want to do your own thing. And the other thing too is there's another session going on today called fundraising in Minnesota. And when I realized that there were actually overlap, and Michael Gordon, I know he's supposed to be one of the panelists on that. He's one of the I thought, the folks are going to go to that place and not come here. But I was surprised, pleasantly surprised by the number of folks who come here because it sort of aligns the message that this whole presentation is about. And so I'm just going to give a brief background. So I was not born in the United States, actually. I moved here for college. At about 16, I joined the Nigerian Army, and that took me to the Nigerian Academy, and I was selected as one of 10 foreign nationals who was against Colorado strength, whereas I did aeronautical engineering. And as a kid watching John Wayne films, I always thought I wanted to come to the West. And so the military is one way of doing it, right? So stationed around forces, I thought that was start. Not to mention the whole thing around attention. So I think part of being a bootstrapper, someone who actually just goes out there and does things, is just a sense of adventure. And then for some people it comes a little later in life, some people will organic. But it's the idea that no matter where you are, in the middle of the desert, somewhere with no water, you'll figure out to make gas, right? So I come to this conversation with that sort of background. While I was at the Air Force Academy, I was in the military in Nigeria and the government chief. So, and I started speaking out against military behavior. I have a long history of executing that one. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the way military dictatorships work, if you speak up against the government and you're in the military, that's treason and punishable like that. So, and it doesn't matter if you're a 20-something-year-old second lieutenant, it doesn't matter, right? So I sought asylum, was granted asylum, went to law school at Cornell. And while at Cornell, I was in law review, and as soon as I was there, I decided to start a company called movie shares. And the concept behind movie shares was to basically integrate the intersection of Wall Street, the internet, and Hollywood. So we got money with it, and I was actually quite surprised. I'd only been in the U.S. 6 years, and I thought, 5 years, I thought, there must be money growing on trees or something, because people are throwing all this money into me. I don't know my background, I'm not connected, how that is possible. Needless to say, we went in the direction of others on some there who didn't know what to do with money. And that's why I'm an RRT right next to the and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So I went to New York City when movie shares died, and I practiced law at a large university law firm doing global securities work, working for large multi-billion-dollar clients, and seeing what my law firm was billing them, and thinking to myself, oh my God, 10% of that, or 1% of that, I probably need to start something and run out of it. So, but also another thing you realize is the more money you have, the more business it becomes, unless you started off with none. So, and really have that mentality. So for the folks who are fundraising in the Minnesota room for looking for $1 million, you guys are a lot more with a lot less than that. Probably 10%. And I've been doing IT business analyst work because that's really where my passion is. I like drafting contracts, I like drafting security documents. I like to climb on intellectual property work, but it's really where I get really excited. A lot more difficult to get rich, and a lot, $100,000 or $50,000. A lot more difficult to build a fast line, so you can 5% there to $1 billion. But there are a lot of companies out there selling for $10 million, $20 million. Guess what? That's a lot of money. So I don't think the goal here is to make people billionaires. I think they'll take a pretty good position where at least for freshman projects, get you to a place where you can start funding the software project. And I started a company called Ming with a couple of friends last year. And in a very short period of time, we were able to build, what I know for having worked at a major retailer, it cost us $1 million for a lot of that. And speaking of that, it was quite interesting working on for the project management projects where someone said, so what's your estimate for this project? You talk to the engineers and you get an estimate of the ballpark. And as you write the number down and you say $1.2 million, in your head you're thinking, if I was doing it myself, with a lot of these layers and a lot of these cut out, it would cost me much less. But so in my mind, I always thought, oh, what's the estimate? I give you your corporate estimate, and then this sort of line is what I was shooting at. Having said all that, so now I want to turn it to you guys. Here's the sort of socratic approach. Law schools tend to do that. It creates more interactive environment. And if you get, I don't know where that is. So I'll just randomly call names. And hopefully that should work. Oh, you did get it? Okay, I'll just call you randomly. We'll start with you. Why are you here? What's your name? Jim. And
I started working for a few years ago with a big company. Excuse me, can I interrupt?
Sure.
It's hard to hear them speaking. People speak louder than the whole other side. My name is Jim Henderson. I'm leaving a big company in about a year and working as what I'm going to do next. And we started what I'm going to do next. So that's why I'm here.
do you have any particular ideas? Or is it for you, are you just broad like, at this point, are you sort of idea economic?
That's a very good term.
Okay. Is everyone here idea economic? Is everyone who's actually married to an idea? Okay, who's married to it? Okay, tell me what's your idea?
Digital identity management system.
Okay. Let's say that is a common term.
Who you are online, who you are, what your digital identity is everywhere. It's in Facebook, it's in Google, it's in your bank, it's all over the place. And there might not be a collective, controlled, easy to manage interface, or a way for you to control. It's controlled by everyone.
All right. Who actually already got what that what you were talking about? As soon as you start talking about that. Was there anyone who did it? Why didn't they all answer? Someone did. Matt, tech guy, or did you get it? Did you get what he was talking about?
Yep.
What was the thing he did?
Identity management.
All right, we'll go with that.
Digital identity.
All right. So, is there anyone out here who's married to their idea? You said you were married to your idea. You did. Yes.
Did I have an idea?
Yeah, you have an idea that you're married to. You're not an idea not.
This box.
Okay. And what's in the box?
It's a handheld portable data acquisition system that works with smartphones.
Okay. Okay. So is it handheld data acquisition system that works on smartphones?
Yep.
Data acquisition system. Can you spell that out? What is
Yeah,
what do you mean by that?
you connect the sensor into the box and you can measure whatever you want, light, heat, temperature, pressure, blood pressure if you want to.
Okay.
And you connect it up to the smartphone and it displays graphs and collects data and you set it up so when an event occurs, you can email you or you can phone calls. Use it as a logger, give it a logger.
All right. I'll get back to you. There's a follow-up question I have that you can really know. So is it yeah. So you probably live in New York, because everyone says it's New York, but or maybe you did, and maybe you're what is it? Tell everyone.
That's something like the walls.
Right. Or nerve, right? venture capitalist to say, look, I've only got an idea on my papers in the 90s, and it's worth $5 million. What the heck is wrong with you? Saying it's worth one, right? Or our for 12 million, why is it worth five? You don't have a platform yet. You haven't built the system yet. All you have is a board of directors. And you go and tell someone who has the money, and say, we're not allowing you to do it. That's what's fun, right? And sometimes it's bad, but well, that's what it's doing. 1960s, right? You stare out and see the moving vision over there. For what? Like technology is all around, right? The exploration, right? That makes goosebumps, right? And those are the kinds of journeys that a bootstrapper has to prepare to take, because you're not going to bootstrap if you don't have bootstrap. It's not possible. And we'll talk more of that. That's bootstrap, right? Where is that donkey going? Or maybe it's the owner, but either way, someone had some ideas around what was possible, right? But they were really willing to kind of like do it, and so that's Chutzpah. And I don't want to make this session about hooray, let's move forward and do things, but it's important to actually talk about these things, because the alternative is you waste a lot of time and money and years only to realize this is really not for you. And why even do that, honestly, if you're not really prepared for how tough things can get? So your passion, ultimately, and I want to really skim through this because I don't want to delve too much in these sort of fluffy things. But
I work in a pretty big
your passion, ultimately, is what gives you that chutzpah, right? Because there's something that really drives you and says, I'm going to do it, regardless if people think I'm crazy, right? I'm going to do it. And you really need that. And this is to the other point that there's really a thin line between, because bootstrapping it, what does that really mean, right? When you're going to grab your own, lift yourself up by your own bootstraps, what does that really mean, right? There's something awkward about that. How far do you really get? Does gravity even let you do it, right? But the whole point here is that you're trying to accomplish what in normal terms would be impossible, and it's important to recognize that. So what's your first name? Sam. Okay. So if IBM decides to do exactly what you're doing right now, how do you handle that?
Sometimes.
Okay.
No, I wish. No.
Okay. And what's your market? Okay. Can you flesh that out? Define that.
That it has worked.
Okay.
When we check, it's linear.
Okay.
That's
Got it. Okay.
the beginning. It's
so I think generally speaking, everyone has a passion. It could be boating, it could be fishing, but for a bootstrapper, I think it's a little bit more this whole idea that you want to, even if it's a restaurant, right? If you look at a space and you say, there's no Greek restaurant here, right? And you think maybe there's some sort of, is it a daunting problem that there's in a Greek restaurant? Who knows? But at least you recognize it and you actually take responsibility for it. And that's one thing I need to add here is actually not just simply solving it as part of a larger organization, but actually taking pure responsibility for it, right? But this is how I defined, having talked to a lot of small business owners in the business we're doing. This is sort of how I ended up starting to define what the general bootstrapper is. And it's evolving definition. I think everyone has their own definition. I don't think you'd be married to this at all. So, does anyone know where that middle picture comes from? Oh, that's correct. That is correct. And this is, I think, this is the point in the movie where he descended into the basement, probably. But the fact is, the more the realities of life catch up with you, the less likely you're actually likely to have chutzpah, right? I mean, it's easy to do that at college, right? When you're bunk bedding it, when you're in the basement somewhere. It's easy to do when you're retired, right? Almost, I would say. Your kids are out of the house, and you can focus on what you need to focus on. But you have to be careful as life starts to catch up with you to realize that there are going to be more and more pressures that prevent it and make it more difficult for you to do what it is you need to do. And this, again, is just getting back to making sure you really, truly have the right mindset. Because if you don't, then a lot of what we're going to talk about after this is just really a waste of time, actually. So, okay. Let's talk about money. There's a presentation, again, next door about how to raise money. Is there anyone here who needs $1 million for their venture?
Like a full $1 million. It's available, but well, I'm just okay. What do you need $1 million for? No, but no, seriously. Since you volunteered the answer, you're gonna have to pony up. Okay. What's your idea? Oh, do you have? Okay, so idea agnostic also doesn't mean that you don't have any ideas. I think generally it means you have 100 ideas, right? As I walk around every day, I see ideas, right? For an idea person, the fear is you have 20 things working on at the same time, and you're just not focusing. And frankly, if you don't focus, none of them are going to work, right? So when you say you don't have any ideas, I think really what you mean is you have a bunch of them, right? Can you throw a couple out there for us? Like what's the most pressing?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not.
Okay, so you don't need $1 million. And if you had $1 million, you would know what to do with it. That right? Is there anyone who would know what to do with $1 million? Okay, yes, you please.
Shorten your time to market.
You do what with it?
Shorten your time to market.
Oh, time to market? Okay. What's your business idea? Generally speaking, so now they're about like a lot of companies trying to do that, right? Is there anything specific about yours?
Yeah. So the idea is to make it build a client.
Okay. So you said. Okay. So $1 million in sales and marketing. Exactly where would you spend that money?
Hiring people to back end.
Okay, the back end, not of the back end of what?
So it could be leveraging
Okay. Do you have a number on that? Like how much you'd spend on that?
well, like I spent like $1,000
Okay. 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 If you had $1 million, I'm sure at that point you'd probably hire someone for $100,000, maybe, to sort of work through some of those things. Because you're saying hire people or get people who do the back end work, right? The small team. Okay. So how much would you pay them each? Okay. All right. That's a lot of your budget, right? And there are ways to not have to spend that, because I've hired people, and at the end I'm like, why did we do that? Because later on you realize there are actually ways to actually leverage other people's needs without paying a single dollar, right? And sometimes it's through other partnerships with other businesses that need what it is you're creating. And I think when you have the $1 million, you stop thinking about that, because you start thinking, oh my, I have to hire 4 people. Then you put a resume out, and they put, you go on monster.com and you get the people, and then you realize, do we really need this, right? So I think there is an advantage to not having $1 million that you may want to consider. Anyway, fortunately, only 1 or 2 people said they needed that. I'm not sure if, let's see. I had a video, but we can actually. Yeah. Yeah, I think the video was going to take time anyway, so we'll skip that. But if you needed to, let's go to this slide. This slide here is sort of an example juxtaposing what a large corporation would spend money on.
We're not doing
or,
continuous
in fact,
deployment,
you become a large corporation when you get $1 million, as far as I'm concerned, because you start acting like one, especially if you never had that kind of money before, which is why if you're a $1 billion company, you act like $10 million
into
is
production
nothing
automatically,
either, right?
And
So you can start a project and then like a year and a half into it, you say, oh, our bad, we made a mistake.
Integration,
and it's not a big deal. Like, it's like no one even gets fired sometimes when that happens. I'm not suggesting anyone should, but you really start acting differently depending on the kind of money you have. So I've worked on projects where
production, but it puts power in the business's hands, and so we're doing that.
No, that's from somewhere else.
Push button automation. One click will promote whatever is in QA on 3 separate Rails apps into a production environment.
I think this is.
I can
second
our app that we have up and running.
continuous integration running our team.
So analysis and design, I think a lot, who's familiar with the sort of typical SDLC process, systems development, life cycle? Can you speak a little bit about those phases, development phases
do some
in
of
IT?
those manual tasks. So I
Yes.
don't think it's a...
Just high level analysis.
To continuous delivery, I think...
Right.
Or deployment.
Right.
I think it's...
Design.
A total spectrum. You need to implement lots of different pieces.
More low level, right? And then after that, development, right? And that's what happens in that phase. Right, and the developers are coding, right, and building that stuff. Okay.
And to minimize the friction there.
Right, and then you got the testing phase, and eventually make a decision of whether to move forward and implement, correct? So at every one of these phases, there are a whole bunch of people who are working, right, who are sitting down and talking.
One button. And
I think that if you have 2 people in a room, honestly, sometimes I think they'll come up with just as good as a decision as if you had 6, right? So if you had one business partner, and you weren't paying that person, because guess what, they've got equity in your business, you're actually, for the period of 6 months where, well, not 6 months, because it would take the larger corporation 6 months to figure things out, but for the period of about a month or 2, while you're thinking about fleshing out your idea and writing out requirements for them, detailed, testable, unambiguous requirements, you're going to find that you're going to get to decisions much quicker, right? And the reason for this is more people in a room, more ideas, and everyone wants to be heard. And sometimes the extended conversation is really about being heard than it is really about getting to the next spot and getting to an actual deliverable. So when you compare analysis and design, if I hired 6 people immediately and said, I've got the $1 million, I've hired, in your case, a little bit less than 100,000, right? So I hired 4 really smart IT people. They're working full time for me, but they're working for me, right? Because if they really cared about doing their own startup kind of deal, well, maybe they'd partner with me and work after hours and do some of that stuff after hours. But they're working for me, right? And I'm paying them, and they're all in a room, and those conversations are going to happen. And in the end, you're going to spend, and most IT folks, $100,000 or plus, the really good ones. So you probably spend $400,000 the first year, right? Just fleshing things out, analysis back and forth during the testing phase and the design phase, clarifying requirements, doing a change request process, and coming up with new requirements. You're going to spend that. The alternative really is just 2 people, right? And I've seen groups here, the 2 guys here who are related. So that's an example of 2 people who could work together for a period of 4 months and actually come up with about $500,000 in value just there, right? Right? I mean, when you have people in the other room who say, I can't start my idea because I really don't have the money and I need the resources to hire people and I need like 20 people doing something, I always sit back and ask, really, what are you precisely going to have those people do? Then the other idea is also the one around hiring a vendor, right? Is there anyone whose idea is not tech IT related at all? Okay. Can you speak about your idea?
Well, my idea actually
Okay.
I've got an app I'm going to be building. It's a mobile app with a server-side component, and the strategy I'm looking at was actually selling it through resellers because I don't have the so I'm building more the app and the forum for them to serve their customers. And so, it's like I've already got 2 potential resellers, people I know that have customers that already need this. So it's like I feel like I may have the first customer. I have my
it's not IT related. So this vendor line, right? So I think one, I like your idea, right? Because you've come up with interesting ways of dog sitting, right? Which is you're out of the house, I'm going to live in your house, right? For that period of time, and there may be certain barriers to entry, but once you've sort of gone past those, then people say, yeah, this is a trustworthy company, and they can actually live in your house, no problems. Right? Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So the distinction between that and a lot of technology platforms
it seems like
there's a lot of unique skill set around, and maybe dog sitting too, but probably it's a lot more difficult to pick up on software development and coding skills, Java, even if you're a Java developer, picking up something else, right? And so when it comes to those skill sets, the question is, when a large corporation spends $500,000 on systems development, are they spending it because that's the true cost of it? Or because someone actually wants to make, is not being very, or I want to be diplomatic about this, is being a little bit lazy about where they can go, right? You want to say something? Right. 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 So in a lot of companies, when someone says, well, we need an accounting platform, some sort of system for processing, someone says SAP, right? I've worked in enough companies where I'm like, oh my God, a lot of people have pain points with SAP, right? But guess what? If you hired SAP and SAP failed, no one fires you. I mean, no one really fires you because like we can always say, oh, this SAP, they sucked. What are we going to do, right? They're big. But if you hired Podunk, is anyone here who's building account systems, account platforms or any accounting type related financial systems? No. But if they hired you, even if you had a better product, right, and it didn't work, it's their head. So there are a lot of things about large corporations that's really more around stability. And honestly, it's not really an objective kind of assessment of stability. Because when you actually get to the bottom of what some of the things these other small companies have done, you realize actually they're pretty good, right? And you can actually make a lot less through a fixed bid, because guess what? A larger company with their consulting services are not going to give you a fixed bid, right? Because they know that they're going to be cost overruns, because someone's always going to want to do scope creep and come up with new ideas just right before you implement. Like, oh, I didn't know it was going to work this way. I want you to change all of this. Well, it's not your money, right? It's monopoly money. So people are treating it like monopoly money, which is what we were doing in 2000 when we got venture, or in the early 2000s when we got venture capital. Right. 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 So that assumes that in the end, when SAP fails to work like it was supposed to, that you didn't already run into that risk. When that happens, you've already run into the wall, right? Right. Right. I think it's about the same. Because it's about the same. Because in the end, those guys are only hiring people that you'd have hired anyway, right? When the SAP says, here's my team, and they all walk in, guess what? All those guys, if you could talk to all of them and say, hey, in the back alley and say, hey guys, let's hook up, they would have done the same thing for you for less, right? Because SAP is paying them their salary, then they've got their premium for marketing and the HQ and the building and the private jets. And hopefully no one here works for SAP, but anyway, yeah. Right. 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 Yes. You're leading me to the next point.
Business app.
This is me in India.
It either helps you get
That's in Taj Mahal. Right. In 2006, I said, screw this working with vendors I'm not familiar with offshore. I'm actually going to go there. I'm going to go there for a whole month. And I'm going to stay for a month. I'm going to go to Bangalore. I'm going to go to Mumbai. I'm going to go to Chennai. I'm going to go everywhere I can go to until I find vendors. And actually, each place I went to, I spent at least 4 days. And during those 4 days, I'd go there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'd walk in there and I'd say, hey, of course, they're happy to see you because they're like a potential client. They don't know how much money I have or don't have, right? So you actually see the working processes, right? The bottom left-hand, actually top right-hand corner, that guy there is Kapil, is actually the owner of a 40-person software development company in Navi Mumbai. Not Mumbai, which is very expensive. Navi Mumbai is about 2 hours north of Mumbai. I found this guy randomly on Elance, right? But then there are a whole bunch of so much noise on Elance. So I got about 10, 15 people on Elance, and I said, I'm going to go to your companies and actually see what's there. And to be honest with you, there's some I walked into and there was no one there. And I go into his, and actually just so happens that the day he had that I walked in, one of the employees had a birthday party. And he bought a birthday cake, and all of them were there, and they were all, celebrating. Guess what? These guys are just as good as anyone else. But that's the vetting process. You can't vet in isolation. There's certain bootstrapping. It means you're literally flying, whether it's on elephant back, to some other country and you're trying to set. Bottom left-hand corner, those are also more engineers, and that's not all of them. That company is still above a rail station in Navi Mumbai. You walk outside, garbage, dogs running around, all kinds of things. I stayed in a Days Inn, not too far from there. That was, as the cheapest thing I can get, but was pretty decent. So honestly, the talent pool, people say, oh my God, I need to have, then I actually sit down and I talk to the folks that are working for SAP, and I say, you're not any smarter in my mind than any of the other folks I've worked for who are working for a podunk company. Now, is there a podunk company that you can't be familiar with? Yes. Do you need to go to India and vet? Yes. But that's the only way you're going to get a $500,000 platform for $60,000. It's not going to happen any other way. Secondly, in doing that, you want to have a fixed bid. So there's a dual strategy too, where at the very beginning of the conversation, and I could probably talk on end about how to deal with vendors and how to get what you want for cheap and have them work through change management processes to get you a little bit more. I can talk on end about that. But you certainly don't want to go on an hourly rate model. You want to go on a fixed bid. You want to also introduce ways where you say, look, I'm in the United States. What do you need from me, right? How can I help you, right? So you're exchanging something too of value, intangible value, but to them it's like an extra $60,000, right? But that's how you actually cut corners, and that's how you bootstrap. Someone was going to say something there at the back. Did you raise your hand? What was that? No? Okay, you had a right.
So in working with some of these companies, did you, after vetting them, say, hey, can I get you more business in the U.S. by doing some work for me?
That was part of the conversation. Guess what? This guy has no customers in the United States. And actually, frankly, you get well, not no customers. He has lots of customers in the U.S., but most of his customer base is in Europe, right? He wants to expand his customer base in the U.S. because he worked in Europe when he started his company, Couple did. And so if he goes back to India and he realizes, like, my God, as a consultant, and you talked to when it talks about consulting, right, services. As a consultant, I can't imagine how much they were charging for my services when I know my buddies back home are looking for work and they can do a lot of this and don't want to leave, because not everyone wants to leave India, right? People have their families there, right? So, and the cost of living there is still cheaper. So there are people who are going to have equal talent. They're not going to want to leave. They don't work for a large corporation. They're just charging a multiple premium on their services, right? And I don't want to mention the big three, but does anyone know the big three in India? Yes, Wipro, Tata Consulting, Emphasis, right? Those are the big three. Well, guess what? They've got corporate clients now. I actually get a little, when he said, to your point about, did you offer them? Yes. He said, yes, if you build a system for me for cheap, guess what? That's marketing for you. You can point to that and say, guess what? Look what I built. Recently, I got an email from one of their clients from Australia saying, oh, did they really build this for you? And I said, yes, they did. And I provided good references. But that's really, bootstrapping it is really about really getting out of your comfort zone and going wherever, doing whatever you have to do to get $500,000 for, in fact, ask yourself before you spend money, if anyone else who had $1 million right now would spend this, divide that by 10 and figure out a way to spend it. When you run out of ideas, the money will follow, honestly. And actually, but the longer you think about it, the more you find, my God, there actually is an alternative. I'll give you another example. This is, does anyone know the big event that happens in Cannes once a year? The film festival. Okay. So movie shares, obviously, the intersection of film and Wall Street and the internet. They come to us and we're looking for exposure, and they say, hey, we've got this new thing called the Internet film category, and we want you to sponsor it. And you're going to be there alongside Microsoft and Heineken and just 8 other sponsors. You're going to get a yacht party, one of those yachts, and you're going to be able to sponsor the yacht party or host a yacht party for a major filmmaker. Has anyone seen Swan? The movie Swan? No? Yes, right. With what's the lead actress in that film? Yes, but she won an Oscar for that film. What Darren Aronofsky actually was the director for Swan, and also Requiem for a Dream and a bunch of other films. Does anyone have a guess for how much this cost? Ballpark? So for a company that didn't have that much money, and actually I wasn't happy about this, but my partners convinced me it was worth it, because when you're bootstrapping it in Africa, you're not thinking, my God, you're going to spend that money in 8 weeks, in 8 days or 10 days. But this is what it costs. 10 days. I mean, you have no business as a startup spending $80,000 in 10 days. No business doing that. Absolutely none. Right? But if you have $1 million, you start being tempted to do that because you're like, I don't know what to do with this money. It's just the way things are, right? You start acting like a drunken sailor. But don't spend money like a corporation. And what you find is when the ideas run out, because what was our goal here? Our goal here was, well, when we go to con, we're going to meet a lot of famous people. We're going to put them on our advisory board. When they're on our advisory board, we're going to get funding. There's an alternative way to do that. You don't need to spend by the way, these guys are half drunk anyway on a yacht, so they're not paying attention to the next. Like, you call them a week later, they're like, I don't remember who you are, right? So that was a waste of money. They were better. There are alternatives. I would say the biggest bang for our buck was $4,000 in Daily Variety full-page ad, saying, this is our startup. We're looking for directors, and we got a lot of responses. $4,000. Right? Daily Variety is seen by a lot of people, at least especially professionals in the industry. And guess what? If you do get the $1 million, guess what? You're going to spend it a lot better. You're going to be a lot nicer to your venture capital partners, right? That $1 million is going to feel like $5 for them. That's part of what you want to do too, right? Because if you make that $1 million feel like $5, guess what? You're all of a sudden even more competitive, because when you're bootstrapping it, you knew what money meant. So this is, again, the tombstone for movie shares. And without speaking to how much money we raised during that time, it didn't work out, because we were spending money like we had more of it coming. And this speaks very quickly to getting a whole bunch of people in a room and the kinds of conversations that usually cause you to waste money. So in this room here, there are about probably 50 to 60 people. And I don't want to judge people's income by how they look. But if I do the math here, someone help me, 60 times 10,000, there's about $600,000 in this room. And actually, fortunately, the recent Jobs Act actually allows you to raise money from people without going through the hoops that we used to go through in the old days, when there were a lot more securities filings and things that have to do. So actually right now, I think going forward, I think the president signed this, you can actually do public offerings online. You can sort of do more. I mean, there's going to be a lot more doopy stuff going on, but it also means it's going to be easier to raise money. Different from crowdfunding or the kind of Kickstarter kind of deals where no one actually owns equity in the venture. But there is $600,000 in this room. And actually, you don't need $600,000. Frankly, you don't. And the number of partners that really dig deep, they're probably, if you walked out of here, all of you walk out of here saying, oh, I don't have money, I don't know what to do. But there are people who have similar interests, and in New York and environments where I came from, you'd find, and I think I see that more, and especially with MinneBar, more of that interaction, more of that conversation. And the toughest thing, however, is for one person, this is why I talk about being idea agnostic, is for one person saying, my idea is not that good. You know what? Let's all sacrifice it. Yours is better than mine. Let's work together. You're never going to get that. When you start talking about idea people, everyone thinks it's mine. How do you help my, but really, truly, among all of us here, someone's idea is much better than everyone else's. That's just the truth. And so the question is, how do you convince other people who have their ideas to use their passion, because everyone here is passionate, to actually come together and work with you? And you can do that. And I think hopefully before you leave here, you exchange business cards with about 6 people, because that's about $60,000 right there. So, technology. This is again to the point, your idea may be good, but not that good. I actually like this. But, yeah, I actually like this. When I saw this, I thought, my God, actually, where can I buy one of these? Be idea agnostic, no field of dreams. You're not going to bootstrap creating space missions. That's not going to work. That's your sophomore project when you succeed, but you can't do it. Like everyone says, oh, I got a great idea. Then they tell me, yeah, that's a great idea for IBM, because you're going to need $20 million to market that. That's not an idea for you. Go back to the drawing board and think about what you can bootstrap. So products and services you can sell. If you don't even know how to get the market, don't even start it. Before we did Ming, We surveyed about 100 small businesses and asked them, would you actually use this service? And actually got them almost slightly to commit, right? Because then we said, okay, yeah, it's actually the market is out there, and we're not imagining it. Here's the point. We're all innovators. There are things that we would adopt yesterday, right? The iPad, it comes out, you probably get it within, I don't have one, but you probably get it within the week it comes out, right? And sometimes because we're all innovators, we think about ideas that only the people who are, innovators would actually truly use. But really sometimes for that bootstrapping project, and by the way, I'm not talking about all kinds of projects, I'm talking about the Bootstrappers project, it has to be one that really will catch the market very quickly, and that you don't have to sell too hard. So quickly adopted by the early majority, it has to be sticky or loud, right? Does anyone have any question about this slide? And I think we'll be running out of time pretty soon, but any questions about this slide? No? Okay. And so this is Everett Roger's diffusion curve. It sort of speaks about the kinds of customers that are out there. You've got innovators on one end, you've got laggards on the other, right? If your idea right now is one that only innovators would want to use, I would suggest going back to the drawing board and rethinking it as a bootstrapper project, because it may not be one.
I know I'm going to
innovators, too, are kind of finicky. You come out, someone comes up with slightly better, and they switch, right? You really want to base your market on that if you don't have the dollars to impress upon them the importance of using it day in, day and out through PR firms and others. Early adopters, they're actually, they're opinion leaders. So when they start using something, they've vetted it, they're committed to it, and they'll start telling other people about it. And the late majority follows, and then laggards, right? Don't determine what you build based on what laggards think, because they will never like anything until everyone else is using it, right? But at the same time, too, don't put everything on what innovators like. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Oh, yes, please go ahead. Market survey, you have to survey. You have to survey. I mean, I had some partners, right? And we sat down before I actually joined them, and there's a whole conversation I can have about how to create partnership agreements and LLC agreements in a way that actually incentivizes behavior among all of you, and at the same time doesn't create an environment where you have 90% and everyone else has 10%, because guess what? The 10% guy is not going to put in the effort, right? But having said all that, one of the conversations we had was around market surveys, and I got people saying, well, the idea is good. Why do we need to talk to people? I'm like, you have to talk to people, and almost you have to ask the questions in a way where you're listening, not just asking the questions for a yes or no. And if you truly survey what you consider the early adopter market, and you truly survey it, which is the marketing hat here that you're going to have to be wearing, you're going to know if people are looking at you with like a stare in the face, or if they start getting it within 10 minutes of talking about it. Now, if they don't get it within 10 minutes, don't walk out and say, you don't get it, you don't know anything. Well, well, guess what? You're going to be fighting for their attention. Right, and unless you have Google's kind of money, where you're going to keep, getting PR firms and impressions all the time, or Apple's kind of money, that you're going to have problems, right? So diffusion of innovation, I really think you should look into this thing, because for us, in our opinion, was let's check all these individual factors and determine whether our idea actually meets these, right? So when it comes to the spread of an idea, it has to be innovative, obviously. Is it one actually that the communication channels, the key communication channels will actually want to use? Are you going to have the time, actually, for an idea like this? Is this something that needs 10 years to catch on, or is this something that can truly catch on in a short period of time? And what's the social system in which you're selling that idea? On the kinds of decisions that people make. Well, you talk to someone, what I realized was, for any of our ideas, when I talked to the person once, they kind of like looked and said, I like it, but I'm not sure if I'll do it. You talk to them 2 or 3 more times, and all of a sudden, guess what? They start thinking about testing it, and they may finally use it. Well, guess what? A large company with a lot of PR budget can actually have a lot of those impressions. So by the time I buy an iPad, I would have heard about it about 12 or 15 times. I mean, I don't consider myself purely in the innovator category when it comes to electronics, but I would have heard about it 15 times before I finally said, okay, fair enough, I'm going to go get an iPad, right? But you don't have dollars for that. So it has to be something that truly gets through that decision stage from knowledge, persuasion, decision implementation, and confirmation very quickly. And by the way, I should know when this ends, and I don't. Does anyone know? 10:25. Okay. All right. If you have any questions, and when I was putting this together, I thought to myself, my God, there's so much information. Couldn't get to all of it. But this is the most important thing, I think, as important as anything else. To bootstrap it, you need partners, because The only place you're going to be able to cut corners sometimes is sleep and other areas, and it's nice to have people out there who are going to work for you. Don't get out of here without finding 5 people who can actually, that you can talk to later on. And if they walk out here really quickly, follow them and look around, because truly those are the guys you're going to need to actually be able to do what it is you need to do. Thanks so much for showing up, and we'll do this next year. All right. All right. Yeah.